He's on it.
He's good, isn't he?
He is good. You've got to look after the talent here.
Yeah. Can I get one of those ones there? What is that?
But
it's more interesting. Oh, maybe not.
You don't want Bud over Bexman. Hello and welcome to another Telecoms.com podcast. This is shot on location from the first day of the 5G World event. But it's still the usual suspects. Nice to see you knocking one back while I'm doing my intro there, Iain. Good skills. So as you can see, we've got the usual suspects of Iain from Light Reading and Jamie on his phone. Just as a reminder that if you're watching this on the site or on Facebook or on YouTube, you can also listen to it on iTunes or SoundCloud or countless other platforms. Right, what we're going to chat about? Obviously, we're going to chat about the show. The show's called 5G World, so believe it or not, there's been a fair bit of 5G chit-chat going on. But we've got people in the background who suddenly got self-conscious that we're recording. And then one of the other things that came from some of the morning keynotes was a possible development on the UK's attitude to Huawei and 5G, so we're also going to talk about that. And I can't think of a third category, so Pierre, you're just going to have to make do with two captions.
We might come up with one as we go on, though.
We might come up, yeah, and you can stay on your toes when you're editing it. Okay, the show. I'm going to start off just talking more generally from chatting to people at the show. So I've sat in on the keynotes, I've had a conversation with ZTE, which I'll go into greater detail in a bit. I've chatted to some analyst mates, and the sort of headline thing I'm getting about 5G right now, and this is a recurring theme, but with good reason, is the sort of monetisation of it. What is the point of it from a commercial point of view? The consensus I'm getting is that the consumer message is negligible. There's almost nothing to tell a consumer about 5G, certainly at this stage, and possibly for a little while, that would persuade them to pay a premium. So a lot of people are emphasising
Unfortunately, I think that's always going to be the case, though.
You think that's always going to be the case?
Yeah, because I think even when you get the services that you might need 5G networks for, like VR gaming or something immersive. I mean, we've seen some of the use cases being demonstrated. I don't think Sorry, I'm too quiet apparently.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
think
all this weight you've lost. It's taken out of your voice.
I don't think they're going
like
to pay the operators more for their connectivity. I think they might pay a gaming company to play the game.
Right.
But this was raised in the panel session actually when they were asked about monetisation. I think the operators are probably looking to. I can't remember who it was, but one of the CTOs said it's more a case of looking to business partners. So, for instance, Deutsche Telekom is doing these trials of low latency gaming with Niantic and Samsung. And what it really needs to do, they haven't figured out the business model on their This is just speculation.
But presumably they get a piece of the action.
I think what they need to do is get those partners into some kind of revenue sharing deal. Get some kind of revenue from a Niantic or a Samsung for providing the edge connectivity, this kind of low latency edge functionality that's needed to deliver those gaming services, because I don't think they're going to get consumers to stump up more money in a mobile subscription.
Just for 5G,
just for.
Can I have some 5G?
Because I just think it's taken for granted. You pay your tariff now. It's a flat fee. I mean, Verizon Wireless's CEO Ronan Dunn was saying as well that he thinks everything's going to start moving back towards unlimited deals as well now in Europe as well. They already got that in America, but I think people are just going to pay a flat fee, and you're going to there's lots of competition that will drive tariffs down, and I think getting more money out of consumers for a 5G connection is just going to be really difficult for operators.
So what did Dunn say? Why does he think things are going to move back towards uncapped tariffs?
Well, he said they're already providing kind of limited tariffs in the US, and the average consumer who's on one of those tariffs is using about 40 gigabytes a month. There's a lot of data.
But that's still manageable, isn't it? It's not like they're using 400.
It's manageable, but I think it's probably going to. I mean, if these services start to take off in the next few years, like VR game. I mean, you think about what it was a few years ago on mobile networks, and it was 250 megabytes a month. It was kind of generous, and you weren't getting through it all. You were just looking at web pages and emails. And, you start to go on TV a little bit, and all of a sudden you're on 8 gigabits a month. I think I'm getting through that at the moment, more or less.
Are you?
Without really feeling like I'm doing very much either.
I'm not. I'm on about 10. I don't probably get through about a couple.
Yeah, as soon as your son starts using YouTube, though, go on.
Well, actually, I'll probably use it more by gifting him.
Yeah. And then I think when then millennials like Jamie probably use more, and then we're going to have Generation
You use lots of
7
data,
doing
I use quite a lot.
What on like YouTube and stuff?
Just streaming on the bus and stuff like that. And to be perfectly honest, like Wi-Fi in my flat isn't very good. I got a very odd-shaped flat. It's not square; it's just very long. So if you're right down the other end of the flat, you don't actually get any connection. So I go on to mobile connectivity.
You should just put your sofa in the middle of the flat.
I mean, I do agree with you, and I disagree with you to a degree. And I think the telcos won't necessarily be able to make more money, but I mean, this is where I've said this before, and I think this is where the telcos are missing a massive trick. If you can maintain the current levels of spend and ARPU, and also migrate people over to a 5G contract, then you start making more money because the pipe is bigger, and it's a lot more cost effective to deliver a connectivity sort of bundle over 5G than it is over 4G.
So just one little query about that.
They might make more profit.
They make more profit.
Well, that's what I think. Just to be pedantic over terms. So ARPU is revenue.
Yeah.
I think we're saying that they'll increase their margins by reducing overheads rather than necessarily increasing revenue.
But give a shit.
Yeah. I can see this is a pedantic point.
I see where you're coming from.
Well,
but ARPU is still directly related to what I'm talking about. Like if you can maintain ARPU, but you reduce the cost of delivery.
Yeah, totally. Then you get a better margin.
Ultimately, I don't think. I mean, if I'm a shareholder, I literally do not care whether your revenues are £100 million a year or £50 million a year, as long as you're delivering me £6 million profit, not 5 million.
I suppose.
But I don't think this whole cost per bit argument, which I've been asking some of the vendors about, I don't think is going to lead to that much of a. I mean, this is Ronan Dunn's point, is that consumption's going up so much. You know, let's say it goes up from an average of 40 gigabytes, let's say in 5 or 6 years' time, let's say the average user is on 100 gigabytes a month. Now, they need a more spectrally efficient technology, because otherwise that's going to start putting pressure on margins. But I don't think introducing 5G isn't going to kind of lead to any sharp reduction in costs in the same way that introducing 4G didn't lead, which is far more spectrally efficient than 3G, didn't lead to a big increase in margins. It will just allow them to maintain the margins they have, basically, I think.
Right.
And there's so many other moving parts in operators operating.
That's a win.
It's still a win, but it's a tiny percentage of what you're talking about in terms of overall costs.
That's a win if you take in all the other aspects of, you know, like for instance, you're talking about the Deutsche Telekom partnership with Niantic. I mean, I can't remember which operator it is, but one of the operators in South Korea is charging a premium for their users for a gaming upgrade. So, you know, you if you can maintain your profitability levels at this, and then all of a sudden you identify 20 little unique upgrades, you know, they're paying $2 for low latency, $2 extra a month for low latency.
And that's what they
benefits.
need to do. Yeah, if they can do that, so that's if operators can pull that off, that's the thing that's really exciting.
Yes.
I think, and that's the thing that's going to excite investors, because $2 a month extra per user is a big difference across a substantial section of the user base. So would be
so there again we're getting into the ARPU versus margin thing, and while I completely concede Jamie's point that if the margin's holding up, how you arrive at it is beside the point. Yeah, it needs a beer, man. But
he is as well, bless him.
There you go, one in there, mate. I'll have one. Yes, I think they get even more excited if you could show evidence of increasing ARPU. That's
well, I mean, this is the thing. If you can turn around to investors, and I think if I was an investor, I'd be a lot more excited about this. If they turned around to me and they said, right, okay, we're, you know, over the next 3 years, revenues are going to be stable. They're going to be, top line revenue is going to be pretty much negligible growth over the next 3 years, but profitability is going to increase 10% year on year. Now that would get me excited, and then if you tie
it would get me excited, but that's
good
not
skills.
No, but then
up here.
You'd also turn around and say, but we're also going to be plugging into these new areas, for instance, VR, for the enterprise scale products, but we're not going to realise those revenues for 3 to 4 years. So you're going to have negligible revenue growth over the next 3 to 4 years, but profits are going to grow between 5 to 10% a year on year, and in 3 to 4 years' time, we're going to start realising some of our other bets.
Well, that's the best case scenario.
That's the Google business model.
Yeah, and so there's two things. I don't have a problem with what you just said, but it comes with caveats. So there's a caveat that Iain just said, which is, are these efficiencies really going to be realised? And then there's the other one where what you said
I
plays...
think they'll be realised. I just don't think they'll be that significant in the context of what an operator's overall OPEX
because of the increased
OPEX
consumption.
is all sorts of things. It's, this cost per bit thing is a really small part of what OPEX is.
What OPEX is. So when I was chatting to some people, I was chatting to an analyst mate of mine earlier, and he was sort of similarly pessimistic about the consumer message, which is there's not a lot of reason for him as a consumer to go off and pay any kind of premium. Well, I wasn't going to mention it because I'm going to mention a bunch of stuff he said and not attribute it to him. So it could have been anyone.
Okay, it wasn't him then.
No, it was Dave. It was Dave the analyst.
Is it Bob?
It was Bob. Dave and Bob. So then we were talking about the business thing. So part of my conversation with ZTE is they were putting a lot of emphasis on the business proposition, and specifically talking about how there's an opportunity for operators to specialise and diversify in a way that they never had with 4G and 3G.
That's useful, isn't it?
Doing weights.
God knows. Nice lot of ambient noise. A good test of your new mics here. Yeah. And how now you can be an operator that says, I'm an operator that doesn't just basically deliver the same as all other operators, which is this utility at a certain price. I'm an operator that specialises in this. I've come up with communication services that are focused on certain verticals, like potentially that Orange that's already quite strong on finance and banking. Maybe they could really specialise on that and corner the market in providing B2B connectivity for that vertical and so on. And so that's an argument. But then when I was chatting to this anonymous analyst, Bob, he was going, okay, but that's still a long way off, back to what Jamie was saying. So what we're basically doing right now, which is a difficult message to sort of maintain buzz about, is we're putting building blocks in place for stuff that could be pretty groovy in 5 years. But right now, there's not that much to get too buzzy about.
Well, I think there are some little pockets. I do agree. I completely agree with what you said. I think there is stuff to be excited about, and I think admittedly, this has been a bit of a false dawn in the sense that we've got 5G, but it's not actually 5G. But there's still, and I know you don't like fixed wireless access, but I think fixed wireless access is something.
What's it ever done to you?
I don't have anything against it.
But I think it is, for instance, look at the way that 3 are using it, and I think that is a really, really interesting business because...
Well, that is a growth opportunity.
That's a massive growth opportunity.
Because they're not in that market, exactly. And the same goes for, same goes in the US for Verizon. Ronan Dunn, to bring him up again, was saying they only have fibre networks in the northeast.
Yes, in other places.
Yeah, and they go into these new markets. It's 30 million homes they can serve with 5G that they couldn't even serve before. So that's extra revenue. It's a lot of extra revenue potentially.
It certainly is.
That's good. So
sorry. I think it's in certain areas. I think it's brilliant. You know what? I still think. I know it's not a long-term alternative to fibre because rules of physics say fibre will always be better.
Yeah, it's a moving target.
Yeah. But ultimately, the idea of having a fibre spine and wireless wings, there's see, I'm a poet. That for me works well. The operators are complaining that actually delivering fibre on the civil engineering front is actually really difficult, really time consuming and really problematic. Then leave the last mile, the most complicated parts, to another day. Focus on the, getting to the cabinet, and then deliver wireless broadband from there. I mean, that for me is an obvious solution.
Even if it's only a stopgap until you get your together
It's a
on the full
stopgap.
FTTH.
Run the fibre to every cabinet in the UK, and then deliver wireless broadband from there. I mean, it's a step change towards fixing the reliance on copper.
I don't think, Ian, you might know better than I do about this. I don't know how much of a solution that is in congested environments. So.
Using 5G
But let's
fixed
say,
wireless access.
yeah, fixed wireless access in like the middle of London.
Yeah, I don't know, because this is something that Orange brought up when they did a field trip to Romania.
Oh yeah.
Where they're sort of doing fixed wireless access trials there, and I asked them about the economics of that. How does it compare with building out fibre to homes? And how many kind of homes can you serve per cell? And it was sort of pretty hazy on the answers. So
Yeah.
I think the business case in terms of that, the metric that everybody looks at is cost per home passed, and whether that's economical compared with extending out another technology to a home.
But presumably the basics are that capacity is always going to be a bigger issue for wireless than for fixed, isn't it? Or am I oversimplifying the matter?
How do you make capacity?
Well, as in, if you've got a fixed connection to a given hub,
Yeah.
the pipe is necessarily fatter than a wireless connection.
But this is the other thing that's worth taking into consideration, is how much do you actually need?
Well, there's that.
Like everyone says, if you can deliver a gigabit over the air, and then that's that's sliced up and allocated to the various different users. 90% of the time, all you need is 20 gigabits per second to actually make your home broadband connection work. So if you can deliver 20 megabits per second, stable, consistent 20 megabits per second over the air, that satisfies the demands of everyone.
But that's why I mean it's a capacity thing. You could do it to 1, you could do it to 10, you could possibly even do it to 100, but you could do it to 1,000.
I think one of the problems with doing it is what spectrum you're using. Because if you're using the millimetre wave stuff that Verizon goes on about and that's what Orange has been testing in Romania, then you have issues with, or people say you have issues with line of sight, and you have to sort of build out outdoor equipment to get signals into homes and that kind of thing. Well, that's certainly what Orange has said in Romania. Ronan Dunn was kind of playing down these concerns about propagation. He was saying, yeah, we've tested it and we can get it through trees and all this sort of stuff. But there's still a lot of concerns about how much equipment you need to build to actually provide a decent service using that spectrum. But if you're going down a lot, down the kind of spectrum range, then you're not getting the speeds. So there's a kind of trade.
But then you're not getting so much spectrum real estate.
Yeah, but Gabriel Brown, the analyst at Heavy Reading, commented, wouldn't mind me saying this because he said it on stage, but he was saying he's got a 5G phone from EE that he's trying out in London at the moment, and he said that even here, using 3.5 gigahertz spectrum, he thinks you're going to need a lot of base stations to be able to provide a decent service. Yeah. Like implying a lot more than they've had when they've been providing 4G.
What do we think the range of
I don't have a figure for the 3.5 is quite a bit higher than what they've used to provide 4G. So.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
Just a little sneak preview of a piece that I'll be writing.
Okay.
The densification doesn't seem to be working in the UK. So the number of base stations, total number of base stations in the UK from 2016 to 2017 to 2018 has declined year on year in the UK. So anyone who's saying sort of densification strategies are working fine may be a little bit of a filler. Although I've been speaking to some of the three UK broadband today, and they think in places like London this isn't a massive issue. That in London the network is dense enough, but it becomes problematic elsewhere. So places like, this goes back to why I think the UK is going to have a bit of a problem. Somewhere like Cambridge, for instance, because they've got so many old buildings there, planning permission to actually put up new antenna is an absolute nightmare. actually getting permission to put new equipment on buildings is an absolute disaster. And
This came up, didn't it, today, actually?
Did it?
The Minister said that they're trying to change the simplified planning laws and make it easier to do this kind of, whether it happens.
Yeah, he did say that.
I think there might be some statement that I've not read.
Well, it was typical sort of vague political stuff, like where we're opening a public discussion or some stuff like that.
I mean, that'll be the interesting aspect about 5G over the next couple of years for me is, can the telcos actually acquire the sites so that the network is dense enough to deliver the coverage and experience which consumers demand? Because obviously, the higher you go up, shorter the range, the more sites you need. But if these figures, which I've managed to get my hands on, are accurate, it would suggest that the trends are going in entirely the wrong direction. And
also, to that point, you don't hear the UK operators saying, when they talk about introducing 5G, they just sort of go, well, we're activating this many sites a month. They don't talk about densification. I've not heard them talk about it. Whereas Germany, Deutsche Telekom has actually got figures in investor reports about how many new sites it's adding every month.
So I
suppose they're just flicking a switch from 4 to 5G.
Yeah, they're saying, well, we're building out this many new towers.
So they're talking about upgrading sites, aren't they?
Yeah, they're talking about upgrading.
So I've been told by someone that CETL, so that's Cornerstone Telecommunications.
That's the
Infrastructure
JV.
Limited. So it's a JV between is it Vodafone and Telefonica and
I think it's those two, and then BTE and
they've got their own
other one.
So apparently CETL cannot get their hands on new sites.
Right.
They're really, really struggling to get their hands on new sites.
So maybe that sort of lobbying is one of the things that's led this chap, Jeremy Wright, to go on about it.
Well, this was supposed to be corrected with the ECC, the updated Electronic Communications Code, a couple of months back, when they basically, the new draft of the ECC allowed operators to approach landowners and essentially slash the rents that they would pay them each month. And apparently, this is one of the unintended consequences of the reform in the ECC is that landowners are going, actually, do you know what? You paid me £9,000 a year last year, and you're using the ECC power of the ECC to pay me 900 quid. Actually, bugger it, I'll use that land to put up a new pig pen or something like that. And they're kicking people off lands, and they're actually actively trying to create strategies to prevent telcos from putting up infrastructure.
Well, it's definitely a thing. I don't know if we chatted about it on the pod before. I've certainly written about it and spoken to other people about it. This tension between the need to access sites and then operators feeling like they're being held to ransom by site owners, and then the state getting involved and all that sort of thing. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the solution is.
I've got a bit of sympathy with the landowners. I've got a bit of sympathy on both sides because, ultimately you don't want the telcos being held to ransom, but ultimately, people are very precious about their proproperty. It's something
their property.
It's something that they own. And do you know what?
If you should have let you put a smelly, great big tower on it.
Well, that's the thing. If you own a property in central London and you just redeveloped it and you've spent, I don't know, 750 million, let's say, making this beautiful building, and you actually spent about 3 million on an architect to design it perfectly. Why on earth would you want some telco toner on, slapping a bit of paper on in front of you, saying we're going to ruin the aesthetics of your building by putting mobile mass all over it? I mean,
are they supposed to be unobtrusive these days?
But I mean, they're not.
You can make them
fry your brain.
Yeah, they're not.
Turn you into a vegetable.
The other thing you've got to consider is, these guys who own these properties, they're renting them out for X amount of pounds per square feet to this flashy law firm who's paying through the nose, so they have these amazing offices. Do they want their really nice lifts filled with yellow jackets and hard hats that are going up to maintain the kits and smashing mirrors when they're taking antennas up and down?
I think it comes down to one thing. I think all heavily regulated industries, of which telecoms is one, is they do a lot of lobbying through the state in order to improve their own business circumstances. So what it really comes down to is the operators want to pay less for sites. which is understandable from their point of view, just as we agree it's understandable from the point of the site owners to want them to pay more.
Yeah.
And so they just use lobbying as a mechanism. And just to sort of move it on about this chap, Jeremy Wright, who's the Secretary of State for the Department of Culture, Media, Sport, and general larking about.
Well, you missed
digital.
You missed out the most important one there.
Digital.
Digital,
Yeah.
DCMS.
There we go. The other point he made. So his talk, he obviously spoke about this stuff that we just covered. He said some fairly generic stuff about how 5G is really important and isn't it great, and it's going to open loads of new opportunities, and how Britain's got to be really good at it. And then he finished off by going, but security is really important.
Yeah.
And everyone knew what the elephant in the room was when he was talking about security, but he never addressed it. He just said very top line, security is really important. And then right at the end, there wasn't an audience Q&A, but Ray, veteran of this podcast, was the sort of host of the keynotes. And he stood up and he didn't let him get away with it. And he went, come on, Jezza. Everyone knows that what you really were referring to was Huawei. Why don't you tell us what the Huawei situation is? And Jeremy Wright wouldn't specifically name Huawei.
No, but he did say the vendor that everybody's
But he said,
thinking
the vendor everyone's thinking of, which is obviously Huawei. Yeah. And what he did say was that firstly he made it clear that an absolute decision about Huawei and the 5G network hasn't been made yet, even though there's been all these leaks.
He also said don't expect it soon.
And he said don't expect it soon. And one of the reasons he said don't expect it soon.
It's not what the operators want to hear.
No, well, it's definitely not. Well, that's a good point. You do by all means expand on that in a sec. But just to conclude my point, one of the reasons he said is because things have been complicated by external matters, especially from the US.
Yeah.
So I decided to interpret that as with a headline along the lines of US pressurizes UK into rethinking. I'm not sure Jamie necessarily thinks that what he said fully justifies my headline.
No, I think partly is searching for a headline there because there has been no UK decision.
There hasn't. No.
I think I
yeah.
said
he
it.
was,
I think
he was given the opportunity.
I think I said rethink.
Yeah, but rethink implies that there has been a decision.
No, it implies there has been a thought.
But he was given the point is that he's a senior government minister. He was given an opportunity to, in a week after reports that the UK operators have all kind of been leaning on the government to get more certainty about what's going on. He was given the opportunity to say, "Well, watch this space in the next couple of weeks," and he didn't, and said that things have been, refused to rule anything out basically.
Yeah.
So any telco is going to be thinking, well,
cheers,
full 5G ban still on the cards, and it might take them 5 or 6 months to reach that decision. Now,
and I think
if you're three or three of the four network operators are all using Huawei's radio equipment.
Right.
It's not such this comes several weeks after there was a leak from the government suggesting that what this infrastructure, this supply chain review rather, was going to say was you can carry on using Huawei in the radio access network, but you're not allowed to use it in the core network. That was the expectation.
Yeah. But the Americans weren't going to be happy with that.
Now it seems like there's some backtracking.
Yeah, because the Yanks aren't buying that at all.
The US don't seem to differentiate between the smart and dumb parts of the network then.
Well, they just want it banned entirely.
Yeah, they just want their approach to the network is it's the network.
As far as I'm concerned, if a single bloke in the Shetland Islands is using a Huawei
I think
phone,
the
it's a security risk.
US's thing is not just a security thing, is it? It's just an effort to try and get rid of Huawei, it seems.
And more to point, put pressure on China, full stop.
The other thing to take into consideration with this idea of there hasn't been a decision made is the US is an external factor, but let's not forget we don't have a prime minister at the moment.
Pretty much.
And Theresa May is 1 foot out the door, and we don't know who is going to be next. And that could be someone like I don't know,
Bojo.
No, I was looking for more of an internationalist.
Okay, Jeremy Hunt. He seems to be one of the front runners.
Who's a real internationalist.
Don't think our lad who was here is in the running, is he?
No, he's not.
I'm not sure Hunt's in the running either. Really.
Or Hammond, ex-Secretary of State for TCMS. Matt Hammond is in the running. Hancock, sorry. Yeah. He's in the running, and he is also has quite an internationalist.
I think he was here last year, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He also has quite an internationalist view. But you look at someone like Bojo, who is quite chummy with the US, and the approach
Trump
to
seems to
Huawei,
like him.
The approach to Huawei will be reliant. Make a firm decision until you know who's going to be in 10
which is when he sort of alluded to there were one or two things happening at the moment.
Yeah,
might
just a
slow
bit.
Things down.
And
but
Brexit and
the trouble for a telco, just going back to the operators using, so this original decision about getting Huawei out of core networks but allowing it to carry on providing radio, which is what people were sort of expecting after this government leak was going to happen, wouldn't have had that much of an impact because none of the operators except BT uses Huawei in the core, and BT's already taking steps to get rid of it. It's going to replace it in the next few. I mean, it's taking a bit of time to do it, but it's eventually
like 4 years, isn't it?
2022 is when Howard Watson says that they'll have. So, and they're either going to have Cisco, Ericsson, or Nokia as an alternative. They're trialling those guys at the moment, but other than that, there's nobody else that uses Huawei in the core. But 3 of them use it in the radio network, and that's the costly bit, and that's the kind of hassle of getting rid of, if you have to start taking out equipment.
And back to what we were chatting about earlier.
It's not just 5G
climbing
equipment.
up towers and getting access to land and all that stuff.
But it's not just the 5G equipment that's already been deployed, it's taking out 4G equipment because of this interoperability issue between the 2 radio networks.
The rip and replace.
Ripping and replacing 4G networks is going to, according to Vodafone, cost hundreds of millions. So at the moment they're launching 5G services. They're using Huawei as well as other vendors, and they must be thinking, well, I mean, what do you do if you're a CTO? And you've got a commercial team pushing you to extend networks into other parts of the country, and you've got this lingering budget. You're building out your networks with the risk that at some point the government's going to turn around and say, well, you've got to take all this equipment out.
Well, you're screwed if you do, and you're screwed if you don't, because even if you do exclude Huawei, in 2 years' time, if the government hasn't banned purchasing off Huawei, all of a sudden you're a CTO who is just about to get fired because he's overspent by a couple of $100 million. Because they are cheaper, and you probably got some technologists turning around saying, well, actually that's the best bit of kit on the market. Why aren't you using that?
And as you're implying,
damned if they do, damned if they don't.
If the decision suddenly turns around, and your competitor sort of CTO has been sat on his hands, and now suddenly he's got budget to buy a ton of primo Huawei gear because the decision's gone their way. Yeah, well, we all know that.
This is what everybody's going on. I mean, and this affects the other vendors as well. So I know whenever we hear Ericsson talk, and Echo has commented on the geopolitical situation a few times, he always goes on about the word he's used is uncertainty.
Just sort it out.
So they're not. No one's doing well out of this because basically the operators are kind of sitting on their hands while they wait for decisions.
Yeah, none of them want to spend, so
they don't want to spend,
that's going to be impacting Ericsson and Nokia because, think about Vodafone, for instance. They unveiled their stats a couple of weeks ago. Where, 38% of their towers have Huawei kit in it. Something like 50% has Ericsson, and the remaining 12% is going to be is Nokia, which is getting phased out, and Ericsson getting phased in. But you don't want to spend. You don't want up or down anywhere else. So I wouldn't spend on Ericsson. I wouldn't spend on Huawei. I wouldn't spend on Nokia. I wouldn't spend on anyone. Until I knew.
Well, and that is the uncertainty thing. It paralyses me. And everyone just goes, do you know what? I'm going to sit tight until the dust settles.
Yeah, that's across the whole of Europe, and it's screwing.
That's
everyone.
why recessions are self-perpetuating.
Yeah.
As soon as things start going Pete Tong, everyone just goes, right, I'm not spending at all. Okay. Have you guys got anything else to say about? I've got one more thing to say about my chat with ZT in mind. But have you guys got anything else from the show or stuff you've been writing about you want to flag up? No? Okay. So ZT, the thing that was interesting for me about my chat with ZT, I was sort of pushing them. I haven't chatted to them for a while. They've kind of kept their head down, haven't they, since it all went Pete Tong last year for them. But as we all know, by
it's good expression, Pete.
Ray's just smirking at my rhyming slang in the background.
How many times did Pete Tong?
Yeah, I know. This guy's name
so
comes
much
up and no one knows who he is anymore.
He's just sitting
no
there minding his own
millennial has
business,
any
doing a bit of
idea
DJing.
who Pete Tong is.
So, Cockney Rhyme sang for horribly wrong. And he's also some kind of DJ, so I'm led to believe. Yes. So they kind of kept their head down to such an extent that I've got to be honest, until I just chatted to this guy, Tommy Bjorkberg, I think that's his name. Sorry, Tommy.
Not Tong, anyway.
Sorry if you see that. Anyway, his guy used to be at Ericsson, clearly a Swedish name, but he's been at ZT since 2015. And I was pushing. I was like, so what's going on with ZTE? How's it going? Because I think we know that by the end of the year they were turning a profit again.
Yeah.
But it must still
Sales
be
are still going down.
Sales are still going down. There we go. And it must still be really tricky for them. If you're an operator looking to drop some cash on a networking vendor, you're still going to have some trepidation. Not necessarily about ZTE itself, but about whether it's going to get in the shit with the US or with regulators or whatever again. Anyway, he was, he obviously wasn't going to be drawn too much, but his whole angle with ZTE is that you might be surprised at the amount of market share we're going to gain.
Right.
He thinks that they're technologically.
Be.
Yeah, well, no, I'm throwing this out here for you to pick holes in. This is just me regurgitating what he said. He said he reckons they got a real advantage when it comes to certain parts of radio, especially to do with TDD technology. I've got to be honest, I haven't chatted about TDD versus FDD for a while, so I had to sort of remind myself. He thinks they're pretty strong on the core. He thinks they're kicking ass on fibre. So he thinks they've got a lot of. Bear in mind, this guy's from the CTO office.
Yeah.
So he's going to emphasise the technological rather than the pure business side.
But it would massively surprise me because no one else is talking about them aside from ZTE.
That's a good point.
I don't think their technological capabilities have ever been in doubt. They've always been very, very highly regarded for things like massive MIMO and the stuff they do on the TDD
he mentioned
side.
that. Yeah.
But I think people will still have serious doubts about using them based on what happened last year, because what it proved was just how dependent they are on US components.
That was.
And they almost went out of business. It was only because that ban was lifted that they didn't.
But we assume the US component, that specific issue is now resolved for them. Now that they've paid their penance.
I don't think you can ever say it's been resolved in the current circumstances, and I think there's always a concern that it
fair enough.
come back. Now, there's been reports in the last few weeks even about investing. I mean, there's politicians still pushing for them to be investigated for other sanctions breaches in markets like Venezuela. So
really? What is worth noting is that they had paid their penance the first time round as well, and this was.
That's true.
This
so
this
we're getting
was a
into about their third or fourth or fifth strike.
I just think that the operator is going to be very wary about using them. And he looks at their biggest European customer, which is Windtrade in Italy, last year had to bring in an alternative supplier because they actually said they were losing market share because of a network upgrade project had not been able to go ahead, and they were doing ZTE, so they introduced Ericsson. I think they're sort of on their last chance, I think. And they've admitted culpability as well. It's not like Huawei where they're accused of being
what's your problem?
They're said to be a security threat, and they've said they deny that. Now there's this case going on in the US where Meng Wanzhou, the CFO, is accused of similar things to ZTE actually.
The sanction busting stuff.
But ZTE basically
admitted
culpability for that, in paying a fine and making changes to its executive team. So they've already kind of done something wrong. They didn't actually replace anyone, did they? They didn't sack the people that they were supposed to. Well, the first time round they didn't. They're supposed to have done that now. Maybe they haven't. I don't know. Yeah. But if they haven't,
and then they just sacked everyone. And like, look, sorry, you're all sacked. We're going to have to start from scratch here.
They just can't seem to keep themselves out of trouble.
And they have for a while. We haven't heard too much ZTE aggro this year, have we?
But the thing is, you've got to look at these.
They have lost market share.
Okay.
According to Ovum.
Delora. Oh, Ovum. Okay. Sorry, Ovum.
The problem
pretty sure it's Ovum. I'm pretty sure.
The problem is that all of these contracts are multi-year contracts. So it's not like all of a sudden they've had their hands burnt on one. They can just back out of all of the dodgy ones because they're really, really big contracts, and they'll come to light very quickly if they turn around and say, no, screw you guys, we need out. All of a sudden, can you imagine if they said that to a Venezuelan telco? The telco would go, well, actually, they've done this. You screw us, we screw you.
Yeah. I think they'll carry on having a role in certain parts of the world. There's a possibility that happens with Huawei as well. If worst comes to the worst for them and they end up getting sort of driven back, they're still going to obviously play a big role in the Chinese market.
Well, yes, definitely. I'll tell you what. He would be. Obviously, he's a ZTE employee, knowing that he's speaking on the record to a journalist, but he's pretty bullish, and he was saying, watch this space, we might actually start grabbing some market share. I was asking about the geography, and he wouldn't totally concede that they're sort of screwed in North America and much of Western Europe, but he did concede that there are greater challenges.
Yeah, there's a lot of marketing.
But they've got Africa. They've got Africa, Middle East, pretty much all of APAC, bar certain places like Australasia, Japan.
Yeah.
Presumably. I mean,
Yeah,
he didn't
strong
say
in
that.
Africa like Huawei. You know, they both have a big role there.
I mean, let's not forget. I mean, this is, even if you do get excluded from everywhere in the world, these companies can still exist because China accounts for a sixth of the world's population.
So that was one other metric he wanted to stress, and when we were chatting about this beforehand, Jamie, you pointed out that they're not the only people to stress this metric. So we've had, I think we chatted about this last week, we've had Nokia and Ericsson sort of having a bit of a pissing competition about who's got the more 5G deal wins. But this guy from ZTE stressed, okay, but what about actual units shipped? So you could have a deal win with like San Marino Telecoms and ship a couple of units.
That's
or you can
Nokia.
have or you can have a deal win in China and ship a zillion units. Was his point. And he said, again, he was fighting his corner, but he said, watch that metric, watch the unit ship metric.
Yeah, so what is it then for that?
Well, he didn't give me a number.
I can't watch it unless he tells you what it is.
Yeah, I mean, if he's not
he
going
He's going to say things like that.
He nodded towards analyst
he needs
firms like Ovum and Delora.
Well, they get it from them, so he needs to.
But the thing is, if he's going to,
Or they guess.
if he's going to
Said
say,
the former analyst.
if he's going to say that, he's got to put a number.
He's got to
it.
put a number on it, yeah, say
Huawei
something like
have
that,
come out
yeah.
and said their numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the most up to date one, but I said this before the podcast when I was out at the analyst summit in Shenzhen. They turned around and they said, at this point, we've got 40 commercial contracts. I know it's gone up to like 46 now or 47. But at that point, they had shipped 55 or 55,000, 50 to 55,000 base stations. That is a number that we want to hear. And if ZTE are just going to kick the fire and try and encourage some flames, then
they've got to come out with a number.
Yeah, I'm quite happy that we ignore them most of the time anyway.
Do you know what? I mean, you make a really good point, and I did address the matter of external messaging with him, and I think he's a little bit conflicted because they know they've got to keep their head down. They know they had an existential nightmare last year, and they're lucky to still even be going at all. And so they're keeping their head down. They're not going to get too cocky. They're not going to do anything that might antagonise the Yanks. But on the flip side, if they are doing well, then they need to shout it from the rooftops a little bit. Yeah. So I think and to be honest, I said to you, even before all this happened, I don't know about you guys, they were never the most proactive PR-wise.
No.
They weren't getting in touch. I didn't have much in the way of UK representation. Their press releases were generally dry as a bone.
More than they do now.
Yeah.
I found they used to do the occasional, what Huawei's doing a lot of at the moment, trips to China, to
all that
facilities.
stuff.
Yeah, back in the day when they were Huawei and ZTE a bit more comparable before Huawei was the size it is now.
So they've got to pick the moment to start to get their mojo back when it comes to external messaging, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just getting a beer.
Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Yeah. Jamie, I don't think that phone's going to get any shinier. That is the shiniest phone I've ever seen.
It's got a lot of scratches on it.
Yeah, I know, it's shagged.
Okay, we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for watching. Make sure you join us for the next.